Hello, I'm Steve Weber, the host of BookCheapskate.com. We're taking a deep dive into probably one of the most prophetic business memoirs in history, The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. With me, as always, is my co-host and my bookworm sidekick, Cassandra. Good morning, Cass.
Good morning. Really looking forward to this one. It's more than just a business book, isn't it? It's almost like required reading for understanding a certain kind of modern branding.
Exactly. Our mission today really is to dig into the source material and understand how this book, from way back in '87, became so much more than just a memoir about real estate deals. It turned into this huge cultural thing, a symbol of American aspiration maybe, and, well, the blueprint for a political career nobody saw coming decades later.
Yeah, and the timing was everything. You look at the context. It's this really meticulously put together origin story, almost a manifesto, landing right in the middle of that whole greed is good vibe of the 1980s. It wasn't just saying, here's how I succeeded. It felt like he was giving people permission, permission to be bold, unapologetic, maybe even larger than life. Okay, let's start peeling that back. The sources, they're pretty clear. This wasn't some story about pulling himself up by his bootstraps. Before the book made him this legendary figure who was Donald J. Trump, he definitely didn't start poor. He got a huge leg up from his father, Fred Trump. Wealth, connections, that was all there from the start.
Right, that inheritance is key background. He wasn't laying the first brick. He was building on an already established real estate empire. He went to New York Military Academy, then Wharton.
Mm-hmm.
And his goal, right away, was pretty dramatic. He wanted to break out of his dad's world, the middle-class housing in Queens and Brooklyn, and slap his own name, big in gold, onto flashy Manhattan projects. Very visible stuff.
And you can see that playing out even before '87. Those early projects really cemented his reputation, like the Grand Hyatt Hotel, right? Taking the old Commodore and turning it around. That showed some real skill in working the system, negotiating those big tax breaks from the city. That seemed like a key part of his strategy.
Definitely leveraging political connections, yeah. And then, of course, the big one. Trump Tower, finished in '83. That was the visual, wasn't it? All gilded, super publicized. It screamed 1980s luxury. But it's interesting, looking at the sources about the time before the book, there's this kind of duality. You have the Manhattan glamour, sure, but he's also pouring money into those Atlantic City casinos.
Wow.
They were high profile, yeah, but they were also where the early financial cracks started showing. Those led to corporate bankruptcies, although that happened after the book came out, which is maybe telling.
That's a really good point. So you have this mix, big successes, visible stuff, but also these underlying, maybe less talked about struggles. How did he manage to sell this image of just constant, perfect winning? Why did he even need the book if he was already making waves in New York?
Well, I think if you connect the dots, the book felt like a calculated move. It wasn't just, hey, let me share some tips. It seems like it was a really focused effort to solidify his brand image, to take control of how people saw him outside of just New York real estate circles and project this idea of the master deal maker nationwide.
Yeah.
It almost created a demand for everything that came after.
Right, which leads us perfectly into how the book actually got written. This part is really fascinating. The whole story with Tony Schwartz, the journalist hired as the ghostwriter.
Yeah, the writing process itself tells you so much. Schwartz spent, 18 months shadowing him.
Mm-hmm.
But he apparently realized pretty quickly that his job wasn't just taking notes on meetings. His real task was, as he put it later, shaping a legend.
Shaping a legend.
Huh.
Wow. And Schwartz has been pretty vocal since then, claiming he basically invented the voice, the persona you read in the book. He said that confident, decisive, always winning tone wasn't really how Trump spoke. Schwartz found his actual speech more repetitive, maybe focused on grievances. Instead, he channeled this mythical version of him.
Exactly. That's where the book's real power seems to come from. Schwartz delivered the voice the author wanted the world to hear. Brash, certain, totally self-assured. Structurally, yeah, it's built around those 11 principles like think big or protect the downside. But the juice isn't in the rules themselves, is it? It's the stories. The Woolman ring fight, the Trump Tower deals, anecdotes where he is always the hero, the winner.
But wait, if every story ends with him winning and maybe glosses over the tough parts or failures, doesn't that kind of hurt its credibility as actual business advice? If you never admit a mistake, how does that help someone reading it?
Absolutely. And that really suggests the goal wasn't honest advice. The sources frame that narrative structure more like a propaganda tool designed to build this image of infallibility. It's not meant to be a textbook on negotiation. It's a calculated act of self-creation. The goal is to convince you that his judgment is always right because, look, he always wins in the end.
Okay, so if it's this carefully crafted myth, why did it strike such a chord? Why did it become this massive bestseller and cultural touchstone if it wasn't really a practical how-to? What was the psychological hook for readers?
I think the appeal tapped into something real. The sources point to a couple of key drivers. First, there's that fantasy of just unchecked power. Think about it in a world full of rules, bureaucracy, having to be polite. The book gives you this vicarious thrill. It lets you imagine being that person who just says the aggressive, blunt thing you wouldn't dare say yourself.
Like a release valve, almost. And you mentioned simplicity, too.
Yeah, that's the second big thing. It makes success seem straightforward.
Yeah.
It suggests it's all about attitude, not about, complicated spreadsheets or years of grinding away. The rules are punchy. Think big. Fight back. Be outrageous.
Mm.
It plays right into that appealing idea that sheer bravado can conquer anything.
And fast forward a few decades, post-2016 election, the book got a whole new lease on life, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It shifted. It wasn't just some 80s business memoir anymore. People started calling it a kind of Rosetta Stone, right? A key to understanding this major political figure. Readers, commentators, critics, everyone was using it to try and decode his language, his tactics, his whole mindset. It cemented its place as this essential text for analyzing American politics, bizarrely enough.
Which raises the next big question. We see its influence. Now, let's look, trying to be impartial here, at the main criticisms leveled against the philosophy in the book.
Okay. Well, a major line of criticism focuses on what sources call a moral vacuum. There's this argument that the book promotes a view where every interaction, professional, maybe even personal, is just a transaction. The goal is always to get the upper hand. Critics argue this purely transactional view is, well, corrosive. It damages things like community trust, collaboration.
Can you unpack that a bit? What does it mean in practice, reducing relationships to leverageable assets?
It means seeing everyone, an employee, someone you're negotiating with, even a city government, not as a person or partner, but just as a tool, a lever you pull to get what you want. The relationship's value is purely based on how useful they are to your immediate goal. It implies this zero-sum game, right? For you to win big, someone else has to lose, explicitly.
And tied into that are the accuracy issues we touched on earlier.
Exactly. The ghostwriter himself, plus later investigations, they suggest a lot of those big wins in the book maybe relied heavily on his father's money or a huge tax break someone else negotiated, or they just conveniently left out the later failures. Remember the Atlantic City casinos? They went bankrupt after the book glorified the initial deals. So the book gets called selective mythology, more than, say, an accurate business history.
So it's selective, maybe ethically dubious? Is there a broader critique?
Yeah, some critics connect it to bigger cultural ideas, like Mark Fisher's concept of capitalist realism.
Capitalist realism. Remind us what that is.
Fisher's idea was basically that capitalism has become so dominant it feels like the only possible system. It's hard to even imagine an alternative. And the art of the deal, critics argue, fits perfectly into this. It presents business success, winning, getting richer, as the ultimate measure of a person's worth. Your identity is your success. If every relationship is just leverage, if life is constant competition, that mindset, the argument goes, fuels a lot of modern anxiety and isolation because your self-worth gets tangled up completely with your financial status or power.
Interesting connection. Okay, looking at the longer view, the legacy. It's hard to deny the book achieved its main aim, right? It definitely boosted his profile. It took him from being just a New York developer to a national name, a brand icon. And that opened doors beyond real estate.
Totally. That celebrity brand was the direct launch pad for The Apprentice. The show ran for, over a decade. And the whole premise was built around that persona, from the book, The Tough, Decisive, You're Fired, CEO. It hammered that specific image into the public consciousness for years.
And then, the political career. The sources seem pretty clear that the political persona we saw emerge later was essentially lifted straight from the pages of The Art of the Deal.
It really seems that way. The tactics felt like direct applications of the book's rules. The bombastic language, the quick nicknames for opponents, declaring victory no matter what the facts said. It's like the book was the advanced copy of the manual. Voters already knew the character, the uncompromising winner persona he was selling, because they'd seen it promoted for decades, starting with that book.
Okay.
So yeah, summing up, The Art of the Deal ended up being much less a how-to guide for business deals, and much more this incredibly effective piece of self-branding and myth-making. It perfectly caught the mood of the 80s, but then went on to shape American culture and politics in ways nobody could have predicted back then.
Which leaves us with, I think, a really interesting final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If this book sold millions by offering a fantasy of unchecked power, playing a zero-sum game, what does its huge success tell us about the real-world frustrations, the constraints, maybe the anxieties that people were feeling, both back in the 80s and maybe even still today, that made that particular fantasy so appealing?
Well, thanks for joining us today. And if you want to take a look at The Art of the Deal and an essay about that book, visit us at essentialbookcheapskate.com, and you'll have the Amazon link right there. Cass, let's do this again soon.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
Until then, keep on opening new worlds with great books. And whatever you do, remember this: when you read,
Your mind becomes its own kingdom.